So, fall is upon us here in northeast Oklahoma. The leaves are starting to turn and the seeds are starting to ripen. So this is one of my favorite times of year because I just kind of cruise around, especially in the neighborhoods or, you know, in the country, wherever I am. I'm always scouting for seeds that might be ripe. Like right here, I'm seeing some cannas growing right there. Those cannas are a plant that I would like to grow. So they're producing seed right now and they should be ripe. And they're real easy to grow from seed as well. But yeah, right now I'm just gonna I've just been cruising around because it's just the very beginning of the season and the seeds are not all completely ripe yet. Like some of those cannas are still in flower. So I'm just kind of scouting and getting an idea of where everything is. And then I'll swoop in, and if it's on someone's property, there's some more cannas back there. If it's on someone's property or at their house, I'll knock on their door and ask their permission, and most people don't really care. They're fixing to cut them down most of the time anyways. So yeah, I'm just gonna scout and kind of make a mental note of where these plants are that I'd like to gather, and start collecting seeds and making sure to label everything and sort everything, and hopefully get them growing on the farm. Now here's a tree that I scouted out a couple years back, and I've been gathering seed pods from it and sprinkling them on the farm. I'm not sure if any of them have come up yet because I'm not quite sure what the seedlings look like of this species. This is a princess tree. It's a really fast growing tree, has beautiful flowers on it. Can't remember if it's I don't think it's a legume, but it is really fast growing. These are the beginnings of the seed pods here. These ones are a little bit further along, and this is what they look like. Well, these are over mature here. These are from last year, or the year before, but see, they make a really great rattle, among other things. But I'm more interested in the seed. And this tree here is probably 10 years old, and you can notice how tall it is. It's a really well-developed tree. So I'd like to be able to grow some more, some fast-growing trees like this for a number of reasons on the farm. So, well, the seeds aren't ready yet. Looks like these might have a couple, I don't know, dang, another month or two left before they mature. We'll find out. Here's a tree we definitely want grown on the farm. This is honey locust, which you can see the pods here. Sometimes they don't have seeds in them. Well, check these. No. Feels like these ones are sterile too. You can kind of see where the beans should be, but there's no beans in these. I don't know what happens to them. For some reason, most of the ones that I've checked around here don't have any seeds in them. Anyways, it's worth a check because it's a good legume tree. No seeds. Oh, there's another one over there. Oh, he's got a couple of them. Maybe I'll have to check and see if he's got some more with seeds in them. No, even the ones on the other side of the fence didn't have any seeds. I'll have to find another honey locust somewhere. Here's what I'm currently doing to harvest stone fruit seeds. Like these are probably plums or nectarines. I've been throwing a bunch of them just directly into some of the beds that I have around here, the mulch pits, and hoping that some of them will volunteer if we get a cold enough winter. But since I'm also collecting a lot of seed to intentionally and intensively grow, I'd like to have some that are just seeds. So I've noticed, feeding the pigs here, throwing all this produce into them like I do, that if I miss and one of these apricots or plums or nectarines or cherries lands outside the pen somewhere, when I come back the next day, it's stripped down to the stone, like the seed, because a chipmunk or something has gotten into it. I assume it's chipmunks, could be raccoons. But anyways, instead of messing with taking all the seeds out of these, I'm just going to kind of throw them in a pile here and hopefully let either the animals or the fungus and the decomposition do all the work for me and harvest the seeds and then put them into nursery beds. Well, I got some fruits from the produce barrel. Looks like we got some white nectarines, a bunch of these red cherries. We got some of these little plums like that. in silicon there, and peach or two. So I'm just gonna dump all this fruit right here. It's outside the pig pen, so the pigs definitely can't get to it, but the squirrels and raccoons and everything else can. So we'll see in the morning if there's any fruit left at all, or if they've hauled it all off, or if maybe they just eat it right there and leave us the seeds. Okay, so let's check the results of this stone fruit de-fruiting experiment where I was trying to get the seeds. It's been 2 or 3 days. As you can see, all of the fruits are gone. And here's a bunch of cherry seeds. Here's a plum seed. Here's like a peach seed or an apricot seed or something. So, I don't think there's as many seeds here as there was fruits. So some of the animals must have carried them off. But still, that's a pretty good result. I can put all these seeds and separate them, or put them in bags and store them. And I think that's a pretty good result. It's a lot easier than composting it down and having to dig through the compost after a couple weeks. So I've got another bucket of stone fruits, and I'm just gonna refill the hopper here and hope that they leave us some more seeds. Yeah, pigs. All in all, I'd say there's about 100 cherry pits and 1 plum and 1 peach seed that's left of all those things I dumped out, which is still, it's pretty good for, I'm not paying for these things, so. But one of the things I noticed is it was kind of hard to pick all the seeds out of the dirt and everything, so this time I'm going to try to lay some cardboard out and put them all the fruits on top of that and see if that helps out. This time looks like we're working with 2 or 3 different types of plums. We got white peaches and regular peaches, white nectarines and regular nectarines. Not really any cherries this time. But I don't know, I'd say there's about 30 or 40 fruits there. So I'd like to get at least 10 seeds out of this. If these dang old chipmunks or raccoons or whatever we're working with will just leave some seeds behind, I'd be happy. And here's a good example of a legume tree that I'd like to get the seeds from, and it happens to have some seed pods hanging right down low to the ground. We'll grab some of these, see if we can find some with some beans in them, and put them in the old sack. Here's another tree that I would like to get growing on my property. That's Osage orange, or hedge apple. It's really valuable as a medicine, and its wood is really valuable because it doesn't rot. But there's a big one right there. Let me see if we can get some seeds out of these things. They're just weird. Okay, the very next day, looks like we're having the same results. The whatever it was carried everything off, but they were kind enough to leave me 1 what looks like a peach or a nectarine seed and 1 plum seed. Oh, here's another peach seed. So that return ratio is not very good. Putting 50 out and getting 3 back. So I'm gonna have to come up with another way to de-seed these things. I was just throwing the whole fruits into the garden beds, the mulch pits, and hoping that they'd come up there. But the problem is, whatever is carrying them off here is carrying them off out of there too, and they just eat them and then leave the seeds laying on top of the soil, where I don't think they have that great of a chance of sprouting up. And even just looking around here in the general vicinity, it's not like they just grabbed them and ate them right here. So I'm going to figure something else out to save these seeds. That one's actually not good at all. It's probably already sprouted. Today we're going to be collecting some walnut seeds. And since I intend to grow these black walnut trees for their nuts primarily, I probably won't be around long enough to harvest their wood. I'm looking for walnuts with the biggest nuts on them. And I found this tree here the other day that just had some huge walnuts on the ground. So, grab a couple of these. Now, these are actually quite a bit bigger than normal, but I don't know if it's just the husk part that's bigger or it's the actual nut. So we'll just throw them out in the driveway and get them dehusked and find out. After collecting the walnut seeds, put them out here. Learned this trick from an old timer. I just kind of put them out here in the driveway so that when I pull out in the morning, it'll bust all the husks off of them. Because from what I've heard, you want to get the husks off of them before you try to store them for the winter, because the worms and everything will get into the nuts and they'll ruin the seeds. So I just lay these out here for a day or two until I drive over them, and then put the seeds inside. Now I usually leave these until they break up a little bit more, because once the shells start to oxidize, the husk, and it comes like this, real easy to pick one out of there. I think that's actually one from last year. That's probably not a good one. We'll check it by the float test. But if you handle this this pulp while it's still fresh, it'll stain your fingers. Oh no, I actually broke one of those. Or did I? No, I didn't. But see, it'll stain your fingers yellow. In fact, the husks can be used as a wood stain to achieve that same yellow color. But anyways, so I like to drive over them a couple times and let the husk oxidize a little bit more completely. Once it gets to about this state, you can pick it open, and you can see here why it's important to get the husks away from the nuts. See these little maggots in the husk here? Those maggots and other worms and stuff have a lot easier time penetrating the shell when this husk is left attached. So we'll try to get these nuts separated out, and then here's one of them, one of the big ones. That's a good sized walnut. We'll get these separated out and we'll get them stored. Okay, that experiment obviously didn't work, so I'm gonna, this time, got another bucket of apricots and peaches and nectarines. I'm gonna just stuff some cardboard on top of it. Something like that. And maybe put a rock on top of it. And hopefully that'll ferment down and be able to grab the seeds out of there in a couple days. Alright, that seemed to work pretty well, but something kind of tore into this last night and started to eat some of the peaches and stuff, and I think they would carry them off if they could. So I'm going to upgrade my plan one more time. I've got a planting bucket here with holes in it, so to let the juice drain out. I'm going to put that down. Then I'm going to put them all in there. Then you put one more on top of it. There. And I think that'll work. As long as it doesn't get so cold that they all freeze and they don't mush down. Today we're going to be collecting some wet seeds. This is Malathria pendula. It's creeping cucumber. It's towards the end of the season now, and the fruits start off this color and then soon become this color. If you look at them, inside of them, they're all wet. They've got little cucumber-like seeds. So we're gonna have to ferment these. So first thing I'm gonna do is collect up a jar of them. Now that we have gathered our fruit specimens, we're going to try to see. What I'm saying about these seeds is you couldn't very easily store these, like, because I intend to store these all until the springtime when I'm ready to plant them, because they've got like a, I don't know if you can see it good on this camera or not, but they've got a little gelatinous coating around the seed, and upon drying they all stick together and become unmanageable, not very easily to separate and plant them. So this method works for all kinds of seeds that are covered in mucilage like this. The ones that come to mind are passion flower, tomatoes are another one. But so this technique should work for all of those. What we're going to do now is just take all these and squeeze the seeds out into this jar. Now we have our seeds and juices and pulp, and I'm just going to top it off with just a little bit of water, so it's about the consistency of a drink or beverage, thick beverage. And I've never actually tried this method, but from everything I've read, we're just going to let this sit out here in the shed and ferment. Right now it's fall, obviously, but it hasn't started freezing every night, so I think it should be warm enough in here for bacterial fermentation to take place. So we're just going to let this go until it gets a little bit of mold growing on top of it, and we'll take it from there. Haven't had any luck finding any honey locust seeds this year, and it's a tree that I want on the farm. It's great for fodder. It's a legume, so it's going to add nitrogen to the soil, and the wood is really great because it doesn't rot readily. So I was driving out here doing a job and noticed a stand of honey locust on the side of the highway, so we'll pull off here and see if we can't find some pods with some beans in them. It's kind of a weird thing because most of the honey locust pods that I've ever picked up or messed with don't have seeds in them. I'm not sure what causes that. It's something I'll have to look up, but we'll see if we can find some today that are good and viable. Here we go, some low-hanging branches. Interestingly, here it looks like these are black locusts and honey locusts, kind of interspersed with each other. Let's see if any of these pods got seeds in them. Look at the thorns on these suckers. That is intense. Huge thorns. Got some more trees through here, and we'll just gather up some more pods. It's been about, I'd say 5 or 6 days of fermenting here. And if you can see, the seed coats are falling off, or the seeds are falling out of the seed coats and separating quite nicely. I haven't really been doing anything but just kind of giving it a swirl just like that every while, every day or two. And I don't know, I'd say in about 2 or 3 more days I'll be able to just rinse away all the seed coats and be left with nothing but seeds. So I'd say that that method definitely works good. After approximately 7 to 9 days, upon visual inspection, most of the seeds are free from the slimy, pulpy matrix that surrounded them before fermentation. And now we're just going to rinse these seeds off. And after a good rinsing, I'm going to spread these out on some paper to dry. These persimmon seeds, after about almost 2 weeks, have been fermenting quite nicely. You're getting little carbon dioxide bubbles, and I'm sure it's turning into an alcoholic beverage at this point. But the seeds are still surrounded by some really thick pulp. In fact, I still can't clearly even see any of the seeds. I can feel them, but they're just surrounded by a really heavy pulp. So I'm going to let these seeds continue to ferment for as long as it takes. In fact, I really don't even care if they come completely separated from the pulp, as long as I can get the seeds separated and put them in a fertile nursery bed to where they can grow. That's fine with me. Well, today we're going to collect some pumpkin seeds because they're in season, and we've got some pumpkins, so they're really easy to get out of there. We'll just remove them like this and then clean them at the house. Oh, we also got one of these turban top, I believe they're called, pumpkins. It's a little bit rotten, but this is a pretty cool heirloom pumpkin, so we're going to get some seeds out of it. This pumpkin actually looks different on the inside. Actually got some pretty good meat to it. And like it's fuzzy in the middle instead of stringy. The seeds actually look quite a bit different too. So that's cool. Well, the dadgum pigs got out one day and ate everything except for just this little bit of fermented mash here. So I'm having to start over. Unfortunately, now it's out of season for most of these things, and we're not getting too many of them. But as you can see, it is working. The seeds are, I mean, it's got maggots and all kinds of wonky fruit flies and bugs and stuff in there, but I think by the springtime, which is with the ideal time to plant them anyways, they should be broken down enough to get the seeds out of there and put them in nursery beds. After a couple days, these seeds have dried, and they're actually pretty interesting. One thing I noticed when I was sucking on them, I put a few in my mouth, you know, to taste them and get a feel for them. If you can see it, I don't know if you can through this camera, but they actually have a fine velvety coat of hairs on each one of the seeds, so it kind of has a weird texture on your tongue. But it's kind of cool that you can see that too. It kind of opalesces white a little bit. But these seeds have been sitting for a couple days, and they're dry to the touch. So I just kind of go through and make sure they're all separated and there's no water droplets stuck between them. And there's not. And then I just bought a bulk pack of these seed packets on Amazon. And I've just got the Latin name and the common name, the fact that they're wild, and the year. And the thing I like about these paper envelopes is if the seeds still had just a little bit of moisture on them, these packets are breathable, so they could still be drying out a little bit. Whereas I've stored some seeds in jars and plastic bags before, and I've had problems. If you don't get all of the moisture out of them, or as much as possible, you'll have problems with them rotting sometimes. So I've had a little bit better luck storing them in these. This year I've been using muslin bags, cloth bags, and these paper packets, and I haven't had any problems yet. So we'll just get all these in here and seal it up, and I'll put it with the rest of the seeds, and we'll be good to go in the springtime. I got some fennel here. The lady said that I could have some of the seeds, and so I'm going to clip me one off. That was a pretty interesting experience. You never know what you're going to run into when you knock on somebody's door. I asked her if I could have some of the fennel seeds that were growing in her front yard, and she goes, "You mean the anise?" That's anise, not fennel. So I got to look up and see difference between anise and fennel, but I got a clipping of both. She said she had fennel and anise, but I don't know. I'll have to look it up. These pumpkin seeds are pretty easy. All I've done was put some water on them and let them sit overnight to kind of soften up the pulp that's left, and then I'm just going to kind of go through and pull off the pulp, make sure the seeds are rinsed off pretty good, strain them, and spread them out to dry. And I still haven't looked up how to tell the difference between the anise and the fennel, but I've got them separated here. The lady who was growing them said that they were different. So these are mostly dry already. These seeds look like they're good here, and these ones look good. Some of them, I don't know. I don't think these are going to mature enough since I've already just picked them, but I'm going to let it hang here until the stalk starts looking a little bit more dry and everything's definitely dried out, and then I'll process them further and get them put into packets. I would estimate it's been about a week since I first laid these pumpkin seeds out. I've the very first time that they dry, like overnight, they stick to the paper, so you kind of have to break them loose and shuffle them up a little bit. I've been doing that about every 2 or 3 days. Everything looks good. For some reason, these heirloom pumpkin seeds, for some reason these heirloom pumpkin seeds have little fractures in them. Don't know if that's going to affect the viability or not. But as I say, for the most part, they're dry. They don't feel wet to the touch anymore. But seeds still go through a lot of moisture release and moisture absorption when they're being stored. So I've got a little muslin cloth that I got a whole bulk pack of them off of Amazon. I've just labeled it pumpkin store-bought 2017. I'm going to load these suckers up and put them with the rest of my seeds. I've actually found that these little bags about this size are just perfect for the amount of seed that I'm trying to save this year. If you were trying to do a big old plot, like, I don't know, if you were trying to do more than a quarter acre or so, these bags would probably be too small and you'd want to get something bigger. But for my purposes, it's just fine. And I took that grumpy old lady's advice and looked up the difference between anise and fennel, and actually, although their flavors are similar, botanically speaking, they're quite different plants. Both of these plants had yellow flowers on them, which you can actually still see. There's some little bit of dried flower left right there, which is yellow. Anise has more white flowers, and the leaves are quite different. The leaves on fennel, which I know from experience, are very feathery and very light. And from what I've seen on the internet, the leaves of anise are quite different. So it's more likely that I have 2 samples of fennel here. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of the seeds on these are actually born from umbrella-like flowers called umbels. And as you can see, there's a little cluster of seeds at the end of every one of these little tips. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rub between my fingers and between my 2 hands these seed heads into a dish, and then purify the seeds from there. At this point, I have the entire flowering plant reduced to a seed-rich pile of debris here. And now that we've got it to this point, we can just start working with several different methods to try to purify this product until nothing but mostly the seeds remain. Right now, the first thing I see is there's a bunch of stems in here. So what I'm going to do is just take a bunch and rub it between my hands, kind of shake it a couple times, look it over, it's mostly stems, throw it. I'm going to do that a few times to weed out the stems. Now we've got most of the big material out of there. We're going to use a sieve that I have. This sieve here should be just about the right size to let most of the fennel seeds fall through and retain most of the bigger stuff. Okay, at this point we got out most of the seeds, and I'll toss this outside because it still has a few seeds in it, but for the most part it's just stems and other debris. On an interesting note, this domesticated persimmon, I believe it was a Fuyu variety, that I got from the store and mashed up and put in this bag to ferment. Fermentation's gone on for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I was just picking up the bag to break up the chunks, as I have been doing on about a weekly basis, and all the chunks completely broke up and disintegrated to reveal that this was actually a seedless variety, and it did feel like there were seeds inside of it. So I am surprised and glad that I didn't try to plant those because they're not seeds. There's nothing left but pulp now. So just an interesting little tidbit. Here's another excellent plant that I want growing on the farm. That is passion flower. Seen 3 of these passion fruits hanging from the tree over here. See if I can get to them without getting ate up by vines. Yeah. There we go. These 3 look ripe. There's even a couple up there. That should be enough seeds for sure. These passion fruits actually have a similar seed to the Malathria that we worked on earlier. As you can see here, the seed is actually surrounded by a gelatinous pulp, which actually smells really good and tastes really good, but it's going to interfere with us harvesting these seeds. So we're going to do the same thing, bacterial fermentation. We're just going to scrape all these seeds out of here and put them in a jar with a little bit of water and stir it every couple days until that seed coating breaks down, and then we'll process them from there. There we go. Got all the nasty looking seeds in there, and I think it'll take probably a week or two at the temperatures we got going right now for these things to ferment properly. After a week or two of composting, I guess you'd call it, or fermenting, the seeds have separated from their coats. As you can see, there's a nasty pulp of floating seed coats in there, and most of the seeds are free. So now I'm just going to strain them off and rinse them well with water and spread them out on a sheet of paper to dry. After a little straining and rinsing, we're left with a relatively clean product. Just kind of rinsed it in the strainer a couple times and filled the glass up with water and poured it off, things like that. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. Now, at this stage, we're left with a relatively clean mix of seeds and water. And this actually brings up an interesting facet of seed collecting. For instance, these passion flower seeds are completely black when fully mature. This here is a fully mature seed. These ones that are brown are probably not going to germinate, but it could just be a variance in the genetics. So I'll probably save the brown and the black seeds, but these very light colored seeds right here, like this one that's white and these ones that are pale brown, they're probably not viable at all. And so the next step after these dry out, I'll just do a quick sorting by hand, and that's really not necessary. I mean, if you're dealing with huge amounts of bulk seed, you really don't have to separate them out. It's just that you're going to have to plan to overseed a little bit, which really, in the technique that I plan on doing this year with seed balls, it really doesn't matter. I just like the aesthetic of having this really clean seed in a bag. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. Like, for instance, these are some passion flower seeds that I collected earlier this year. And these are all clean, and I mean that's just a beautiful thing. Each different type of species has its own beautiful and unique seed. But anyways, so once these dry, I'll separate out the lighter ones and then place them into a labeled container for seed balls in the spring. Well, it's the end of November, and I think I'm about done collecting all the seeds that I'm going to collect this year. I'm kind of trying to keep it on a minimal basis so I can focus all my energies on a smaller amount of seeds. In the past, I've overwhelmed myself by collecting a whole crap ton of different kinds of seeds that I had no experience with, and then come springtime, I wasn't able to put enough energy into each different type of seed, and I had all my energy spread out over a whole bunch of different types, and I didn't end up getting any good results. So, and it's kind of a biodynamic agriculture methodology that I learned from John Jevons, and he suggests investing all of your efforts in the beginning into something very small and working to make something, just a few things, grow really great. instead of trying to make a bunch of things grow and not doing that great. So what we've got so far is I've got walnuts and maybe 4 different other kinds of trees, and then I've got some passion fruit vines, trumpet vines, cannas, garlic, marigold, burdock, amaranth, fennel, a few other things, maybe like 10 or 15 total. And I'm just going to try to get these to go. And if every year I can get a few of these to take hold on the farm, and from then on out I can gather my own seed, or hopefully have a perennial or a self-seeding plant that keeps going, as long as I can get I would be happy with getting like 3 plants established every year, because then every year you're 3 plants richer. Okay, so this is probably the end of the seed gathering series for this year. Stay tuned, because in the springtime we're going to go through and plant all these seeds and get them all going and spread them out all over the farm, and that's going to be awesome. So thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for whatever comes next season.